So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cork in the North podcast. This is a first for the Cork in the North podcast. Somebody I've actually voted for.
Oh, me? I'm here.
Yeah, somebody I've actually voted for in my first ever time voting in an election in Northern Ireland. This is what you get when you vote for Naomi.
I love how you're admitting
you get a one-to-one appearance with Naomi.
Yeah.
There's thousands of people in the queue waiting to meet Naomi. This is what you get with the Alliance package.
You can cash it in.
Cash it in. Naomi Long, our first ever leader of a political party, MLA, on the Cork in the North podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
And I thank you for accepting the invitation because everybody rejects it.
Yeah, I can imagine as well after the week you've had, this is maybe the last thing on your list of things to do. So we're very appreciative that you took the time to come talk to us.
I would prefer to be lying down in a dark room at this stage.
We can do that. We can arrange that. We can arrange that.
I think for the sake of the podcast, we'll keep the lights on and keep talking.
Well, we're all about keeping the lights on. Yeah. Naomi, last week, obviously, local council elections. Would it be fair to say you had a good week?
I think it'd be fair to say we had a very good week.
Yeah.
I suppose I never give numbers in advance of elections because, you can't predict. You just can't. And also, if you do predict and you get it slightly wrong, you pay a penalty for it afterwards. So I never say what I'm expecting. But I did give away to the party that I thought if we were in third place coming out of the local governments and we hit over 60, I'd be made up when we got to 67. So I reckon that's pretty good.
You've had a good 12 months. I mean, obviously the last election as well, you grew as well. But obviously, as some would say, we haven't seen that actually be enforced yet. But what does the increase in the Vote for the Alliance tell you as a leader? What do people want when they're seeing increased voting for parties? You know, like Sinn Féin and yourselves who want to go back into government. Like, what's that telling you?
I mean, I think it's fairly clear what they want are politicians who are focused on solutions, who want to make this place work, who want to get back into Stormont and downstairs in the chamber doing our jobs. And it is really frustrating. I mean, I've been in politics now, I think this year it will be 22 years. So my first foray into politics was the council elections in 2001, and I was one of 3 Alliance councillors in Belfast. We now have 11, so things have changed a lot. But I got involved in politics because I wanted to solve problems. I wanted to get things done and make the community I lived in better than it was. And it's just, you feel here like you're treading water, like you're not really getting anything done because we're going and we're asking civil servants to do stuff that we know they can't do without a minister. So it is frustrating. It's frustrating for us, but it's more frustrating for our constituents. You know. So I think the message is pretty clear. People just want us to get back to work. And in East Belfast I went to one lady's door and she said, I don't know if I'll vote for you or not, which is probably a no, because usually people are fairly open if they're going to vote for you. And she said, but I'll tell you who I'm not voting for. I'm not voting for the DUP. They're up there stealing a living. And I just thought, that is how people see it.
When I said that, sorry.
But it was how people see it, because of course MLAs are still working. We're still doing constituency work. We're still doing policy development and all the rest. But we're not doing the bit that really matters. We're not in the chamber scrutinising departments. We're not setting budgets. We're not giving direction. We're not doing all the things that people expect us to be doing, sitting in committee, going through, holding the account, all that stuff. Yeah. And people are angry because they're struggling financially in the CMLAs, albeit that we're on a reduced salary, still earning a reasonable salary and not actually doing all the job. So I can get why people are just totally fed up.
Yeah. When you got into politics, was this because you came from an engineering background where you like to problem solve? Because I know you trained as an engineer, you went into work as an engineer.
I did.
Was it because of that, or how did you actually get into? Because I often say to myself, how people say to me, like, how did you become a comedian? I'm like, well, I don't really. There's no formula.
No.
Did somebody approach you?
Yeah.
Were you just sort of were you recruited?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I joined the party voluntarily. Obviously, everybody does. We don't force people to join. But I joined the party during an election. It was about 1995. So it was just after the first ceasefires. I just graduated in 94 and sort of thought, things could be changing, maybe for the first time in my lifetime, because all of my life was the Troubles as the backdrop.
Yeah.
And this was the first chance that things might turn around and be different. And I was kind of excited for that and wanted to be part of that change. But I thought being part of that change would be, paying my sub every month and letting somebody else get on with it, and I would go off and be an engineer and do my thing. And that pretty much is what I did up until 2001. I got a bit involved in campaigning and elections and enjoyed that, but I had no ambitions whatsoever to be a politician. And I got into it by accident because basically in 2001 I was asked to run in the local DEA where basically I'd gone to primary school, I had gone to secondary school, I had pretty much lived my whole life, and they said to me, look, you would be the right person for this. And I said, no way, I am not running. And I was asked about 3 or 4 times, and I said no. And then they said to me, look, in truth, you're not going to get elected because it's going to be a really rough election for us. We'll probably lose, with 6 councillors at that point, we'll probably lose at least half of them. So it's just a name on a ballot paper. And I said, well, look, if that's all it is, fine. And we did lose half our councillors, but I got elected. Wow. So, and that was kind of where it started. So I sort of fell into politics rather than actively choosing. I'm always slightly wary of people who grow up with an ambition to be a politician, because it's a kind of odd thing to aspire to be. I know some really good people who do that, but I just didn't. I didn't have a very high opinion of politicians, if I'm honest. Growing up during the Troubles, I think it would have been hard to. I just wanted to be an engineer, solve problems, build things, fix things, and that was that was how I was going to be. And then, as I say, I got into politics, and I think it did bring that with me, that kind of, if people bring me a problem, I'm not going, who's to blame? I'm going, how do we fix it? You know, and I think we need more of that in politics, because we spend an awful lot of time saying who did what to whom and who's at fault and what they've done wrong. And we analyse the problem and how we got here, and if we'd done something 5 years ago, we wouldn't be here now. And that's all well and good, and it's there's learning in it. But what the people out there want to know is, what are you going to do to fix it? Yeah. How are you going to make it better? And that's the bit of it that I actually enjoy, is the fixing stuff.
When we were, growing up in our teens, we ended up becoming comedians that we are today. But I think part of that was we would watch other comedians when we were younger, and we'd get inspired. I would watch like Eddie Murphy, Andrew would watch like Irish comedians and things like that. When you were in your teens, maybe in university, was there politicians that you maybe looked up to and seen them were like, quite like that person, I think I could see a bit of myself in that person, or I think that person would inspire me to want to do something like that? Maybe it doesn't have to be from here, maybe it was someone American, maybe it was UK, maybe it was somewhere else in the world, but was there ever anyone you looked at and you went, they're quite inspiring, or they're quite a leader? There
were people, even locally in politics, there were people, not all from Alliance, but some from Alliance, who I thought were quite inspiring, but I was never thinking of politics as something I wanted to do. So, my heroes were people who built bridges and designed sewers and all that kind of stuff. I was thinking about these people who had invented stuff, and that was my thing. So, I never really thought of it that way. I suppose I had an interest in politics. Like, it's not that I didn't like our politics in Northern Ireland. I think a lot of people have that in common, but. Was it political? Yeah, it was political. I was one of those people who, if there was a debate on politics in school, I was always in the middle of it. When I was at university, I was on the Joint Staff Student Consultative Committee. I was like, they nicknamed me the shop steward in the faculty office in the engineering department, because I used to go in, with a list of like what is wrong with the engineering department and what you need to do better. And it was like, that was the kind of person I was. I was always going to be the first one. If people said, do you have an opinion? I'd be the first one with my hand up.
So you do clash yourself very opinionated.
Yeah, I am. Well, it's not maybe that I'm very opinionated, but if I have an opinion, I'm not shy about sharing it.
Yeah.
Except at comedy shows, because I know you never put your hand up or give an opinion at a comedy show.
Can I just say, Naomi, you're a very good time, because when you came out with the to Jim McAllister, the One Seat Wonder, that was very good. Did you preempt, because obviously you're doing that in the chamber, you're in the whatever it's called, the chamber, is it?
Yeah.
It's chamber. And you said, we've got the One Seat Wonder behind me. Was that an ad lib?
It was an ad lib.
Wow.
If I'd thought about it,
got a big laugh though.
If I'd thought about it, I probably wouldn't have said it, to be honest, because it felt a bit cruel afterwards. But at the time, I was so angry, because I was in the chamber. I'd gone in saying, look, I'm only going to make, because we've been recalled a few times, and I said, look, my speech is literally 3 points. I'm not going to drag this out. And then while I was speaking, I had people like hectoring at me and all the rest. And I kind of then, they were going on about, Alliance being nationalists and Republicans, and then they were doing a whole lot of other stuff, and they were shouting about stuff. And, lecturing us on fairness and inclusion. And I was like, no, I'm not taking that from these guys. I'm not. So I kind of lashed and said, not going to listen to that nonsense. But yeah, the One Seat Wonder thing was just off the top of my head.
I mean, it's a great line. Like, from a comedian's point of view, You smashed it.
We can appreciate that structure.
It went down very well, I have to say, on social media.
Do you understand the buzz you get now when you get a laugh? Do you understand?
We've been looking for a one-seat wonder show all this time. We can't find it.
I'm more used as a politician to being laughed at than laughed with, so I'm not looking for laughs, to be fair.
Yeah. When you deliver a line like that and you leave the chamber and you go about it, what is the sort of what happens down the canteen here? So I want to ask you a question now. I've always wanted to know this. You could be directly politically opposed to people in here, which is fine, right? You go down to the canteen for a cup of coffee and your lunch or whatever, and you're sitting there. Next thing, somebody walks in that you despise. Do you ever actually turn around to each other and go, "Oh, did you see that last night on telly?" Or what? Do you actually? The TV shows that you all hate each other, but actually away from it, when you're actually in a small room, say like this, do you actually get on?
Sometimes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's actually a bit of crack with you.
I think there's a lot less animosity than people think there is, right? So at a one-to-one level, mostly we can kind of get on reasonably well. There's very few of the politicians in Stormont that I genuinely couldn't bring myself to speak to or couldn't pass myself in company with if I had to. Equally, there's probably not a whole lot of them that I would choose to spend a lot of time with outside the Assembly, if I'm honest.
Do you want to go for a pint or a drink or a glass of wine?
No, I mean, there are some I would, but I mean, 1 pint maybe.
Is that just with Jim, the one-seat wonder? He's the 1 pint wonder as well. 1 pint wonder.
There are some that are more like. We're all human, and there are things that we can all chat about. There are some that I would get on better with than others, but I don't think there's really, I mean, certainly not on my part, there's no real hatred. I mean, there's irritation at times and frustration and all those things, but I wouldn't really wish any of them ill. I think that's
I know what you mean.
And I think most of us, if we're in the canteen, we tend to sit with our party colleagues, but not exclusively. If we see somebody there, we'd have a chat or whatever. There are one or two, as I say, that are harder work than others, but, it is what it is. We're going to be in the same rooms as each other, in the same place as each other, and occasionally we might even agree with each other, even though a lot of the time we don't. So it's about trying to be, I guess, professional about it, but we all have our moments in the chamber. And
it seems to be like, your constituents will watch this, so you want to be seen to be fighting, all the time for the right issues, because that's the stuff that goes out on telly, isn't it? Like, or the clips.
But I think also it depends your kind of politics. Like, our voters quite like us agreeing with people. So Alliance voters naturally want to see us building a constituency beyond the Alliance Party, working with other people, being collaborative and cooperative. So there's less at stake for us, if you like, in praising other parties when they're doing the right thing and being more kind of affable and amenable to it. If your whole party ethos is about doing somebody else down all the time, it's much harder for you to be seen to be polite or even courteous, let alone friendly. And I mean, there are politicians still in here who don't speak to other people, like who just blank them in the corridors. I think it's a bit weird. I think it's a bit pointless. But there is still a little bit of that. It used to be more common, like when I started out, things like who you would shake hands with was a big deal. I mean, I remember people having absolute meltdowns about going to meetings, and it was like, what are we going to do when we go in? Are you shaking hands? Oh, I don't know if I want to shake hands. And it's like, I'm just going to
break that barrier, don't you?
It's kind of, but it's also kind of, it speaks to how nervous people were because they didn't know how to interact with each other because they'd never been in rooms together. A lot of that now is gone. Like, that's kind of very old hat. There are still some people who would cling to it, but it's very rare to see that anymore. And I think it's a good thing because ultimately, regardless of party, we're all human beings. We all have families. We all go home at night and have, our moments with their friends and our family and all the rest. And it's not all about politics. So you've got to be able to get beyond that and see the person and maybe even understand. Sometimes if somebody's in a bad mood, it isn't because they're not happy with the politics of the situation. They've just had a rough time, maybe family member ill, or they're under pressure because the kid's at school, or what. You don't know. People have a life outside of politics. And I think we just need to be a wee bit kinder to each other. Not all the time. Not when we've got lines like one seat wonder hanging around to be used, but a lot of the time we can be a wee bit.
He's great comedy value.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be willing to fight your corner, but equally you have to recognise, that there's a wee bit of humanity there too, and that we need to focus on that as much as anything else.
I want to take it back 10 weeks ago. I'm watching RTE and it's in the White House and I see Niall Horan singing, right? And then I look on the thing, was the second or the third row?
Second row,
So you've got SDLP Mr Eastwood, but you're sitting next to Jeffrey, right? And I'm watching this going, you look at all them there over there on a big jolly now in America. What is the crack like with that? Now, because it's the whole of Ireland goes over, really, isn't it? The whole island, right? How do you get invited?
There's nobody left here.
No, but yeah.
Me and Andrew.
It's just the two of us.
Two sad
The two
young
of us
men
sitting there
just-
going, let's join the TUV. We've got nothing else to do. Like, but like, how does the invite come across? So we do St. Patrick's Day all the time in the White House, right? That's our tradition. Whenever, especially when there's a real pro-Irish president. And do you get told, oh, there may be a place because he wants to bring the North and the South over? Like, how does this all come about that you end up sitting in the White House going, this is wild?
It's weird. I haven't been for years and years because I generally don't do it, largely because it is that thing of everybody from here goes over there, and it used to be really important because people couldn't mix over here socially. They couldn't spend time together. They couldn't chat around the fringes because everybody was watching to see, oh, you're talking to them, and so it was all a bit awkward. Whereas that's gone now. So the advantage of being out of Northern Ireland, talking to other people, is reducing, I think, if I'm honest. And so I haven't done it for years. I went when I was Lord Mayor, which is 13 years ago, and that was the last time I'd been until this year.
Was that Obama at that time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow. How was that? What's he like? What's he like?
Pretty cool.
What's he like? Do your Obama impression. Do it.
Hello, Naomi. That's my Obama impression.
It's not great.
Naomi,
know,
that's a
I
great
mean, I'm
Obama
really sorry,
impression.
but
I will leave this interview right now.
Naomi, do you know Barack Obama follows him on Twitter? He was the first
that
people
right?
that Barack
Obama follows me on
follows
Twitter. I can genuinely show
He was
you
the
the
first
Twitter
person
account.
ever on, one of the first few people ever on Twitter.
Well,
Barack Obama follows him.
my confession is that I met Barack Obama a number of times, but I met him when I was an MP in Westminster, and everybody else was really excited to meet Barack Obama, as you would be, and I was really, really excited because Tom Hanks was with him.
Oh, yeah?
So we did the whole,
Can you do Tom Hanks?
I can't do Tom Hanks. Sorry. I can't do Obama.
So there was myself and Margaret Ritchie from the SDLP and Dawn Pimarola, who was the deputy chair, deputy speaker in Parliament. And she came over and she said to us, do you want to go and offer Tom Hanks a tour? And we were like, yeah, we do. And off we went. I don't really get starstruck with politicians.
Right.
And maybe because I am one, I don't know. But it's like when you go behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz and you realise it's just a wee man with levers and a big voice, you know. So it's not as exciting meeting politicians. It's still exciting meeting politicians like Barack Obama because he was amazing. But it's not as exciting. Whereas meeting like a proper film
Forrest
star
Gump.
is just like,
You're
it was
like,
amazing.
Tom, politics is like
So
a box of chocolates.
well, we wandered round Parliament with him, and we walked through the House of Commons and showed him where the dispatch box was, and he was just drinking it all in because the Americans love all the age on everything.
But they
and
watch
stuff.
PMQs, don't they, and stuff?
And he was just like, this is amazing. And we were like, well, if you ever decide to play a Prime Minister, this is your primer, you'll know how it all works. And but that was my Barack Obama moment, was actually meeting one of his entourage. So
And what was he like to you? What was his chit chat like? Was it just like? Did you tell him obviously you were from Northern Ireland and stuff?
Yeah. We chatted away to him, and I think Tom Hanks has a reputation anyway for being one of the nicest people in showbiz.
Does he? Yeah.
But he really is just a gent, lovely man. So yeah, it was weird, but no, I mean, I went 13 years ago. Was really interesting, and it was lovely to see it and all the rest. And then went again. I'm actually thinking back to 13 years ago. Yeah, it would have been because...
It wasn't Trump.
No, it wasn't. No, it definitely wasn't.
That would have been a hell of a
George
trip
W.
if you
Bush
went
was
there.
it?
No,
it's not.
definitely
Crooked
wasn't.
Naomi.
It definitely wasn't Trump. Definitely wasn't Trump.
I love the Alliance Party.
That would have finished us.
Did you ever actually meet him? Did you meet him? Did you ever meet Trump?
I managed to avoid that.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, did you?
Did you actively avoid it?
Oh, no comments.
Sorry.
We've got communications from the Alliance Party over there going, stop it.
Well, I didn't have to be very active in avoiding him because he wasn't. I had to go out of my way to.
You don't play golf, do you?
I would have no.
You don't play
I'd
golf.
had to go out of my way to like Washington or New York or somewhere to see him, and I wasn't going to do that. So I just avoided America for that period, and that worked out well. But this time round, there were obviously 25th anniversary Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah.
Northern Ireland was going to be a big part of it.
Yeah.
We knew that Joe Kennedy III was going to be the envoy, and he was going to be there. Yes. So there was this kind of buzz that Northern Ireland was in, and they kind of approached and said that we're hoping to get all the party leaders to go over, and I said, and they were like, you should come.
Come on, Naomi.
So I went, and I'm glad I went. It was really, really interesting.
Where do you stay?
Oh gosh,
Who organises the hotels for you? Like,
oh, I did.
so do you not like all of you get put into like one hotel?
No,
It's like, right?
no. I wish it was that easy. No, I was going to New York first to speak on a conference in New York. So I flew out and stayed in a place at the airport, not recommending it, not naming it either. But no, don't do that. It wasn't great. And then I was there for 2 nights, and then I was in Washington, and I stayed in a place just sort of shy of Georgetown. But yeah, I was the only one.
The Airbnb in it, or were you like
No,
hotel?
I was staying in a hotel.
Travelodge, like?
No. Well, a Travelodge had been a step up from where I stayed in New York, but no, the place I stayed in Washington was actually quite nice, and it was in a good place, and there was walking distance of a lot of stuff. But no, it was grand. Like, but we all make our own arrangements, and there are benefits to that too, because there are times when you just want to get away from it all. It's quite an intense. Yeah. Like, people will say it is a jolly, and I get why they say that. Like, I mean, there are breakfast meetings, there are lunch meetings, there are dinners, there are, it's just, so you're constantly around people all the time. And sometimes it's just nice to be able to go home and close your door and be away from everybody. Would
you class yourself as a bit of an extrovert, introvert? Do you go to work, but you also like to have that separation of, I need to be on my own for 5 hours now, kind of thing?
I remember somebody said that there are introverts who do extroverted jobs, and I think that's what I am.
All right.
So I feel like that too.
Yeah, so do I.
I quite like people in a work setting, but if you were to say to me, what's your idea of hell, it would be like a mixer, just somebody hands you a glass of champagne and you have to walk around and talk to strangers for an evening. That kills me. I die inside.
Me and you have so much in common. Like.
No, I do. I
hate people too.
No. You jest, but no, I mean, I like dealing with people about stuff. So, like, I will, if somebody comes in and they're talking to me, I get a lot of energy out of that, and I like to, but also dealing with people all the time is quite draining. Yeah. So I do literally need to go home and close the door and just, I'm an only child, and I think I was always used to like having my own space and having a time out. And I think I find it quite overwhelming if there are people around me all the time. And genuinely, there's nothing I hate more than being invited to a reception for something, and you walk in with a glass, you have to go and you have to say hello to people, and they're saying hello to you, but kind of looking over your shoulder to see if there's something more interesting.
Shoulder gazing.
And I just, it's so false. It's just like, do you know what? Just take us in, put us out of our misery, let us take a seat beside whoever we're stuck with for the evening and have a proper conversation, because all the small talk kills me.
Do you like it?
The small talk kills me.
So many boxes
we're not big small talkers.
Can I ask you one question about the White House?
Yeah.
I'm watching it.
Yeah.
Niall Horan comes out, Joe Biden, Rob Carney, the whole shebang is there. You're there for how long? 4 or 5 hours?
Well, we're there, I think it was, about 3 or 4 hours. Right. Again, there was a reception beforehand.
Did you get a little bit of the bubbler?
Yes, there was. There was the drinks reception, though most of the
Joe
drinks
Biden
receptions...
doing shots?
No, he wasn't with us at the reception. He kind of arrived afterwards. But yeah, there are drinks receptions and all the rest of it, and... I guess some people, that's the thing. But they tend to be after the event, because they don't want people standing up and singing along with Niall Horan and ruining his set,
So this is a very Irish event.
Yes.
Okay. An all-Ireland event, very Irish event. As I'm watching it, you're sitting next to Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jeffrey is part of the party that obviously has issues with Brexit, etc., etc. Did you feel that trip, he may have realised that there was a bit of pressure coming on him, or realised that look at all these people celebrating and working together? Did he feel a bit left out? Because he's sitting at this big Irish event, and Jeffrey's a British person, and it's kind of like, does he not feel a bit like, I saw him laughing when Niall Horan was singing and talking to the crowds. Are you sitting next to him like, look, this could all work out if you just... cracked it on, like.
You could have Niall every day.
You could have Niall every day, like.
Well, interestingly, and I don't know if this is good for Niall's credibility or for Jeffrey's, but he did say to me after he played his set, he said, I'd actually get some of his CDs. Don't even know
CDs?
Exactly.
Downloads,
He
Jeffrey.
actually said that. He actually said, I'm just quoting, but I'm of that ilk as well, so I make no joke about it.
But you're sitting here and Jeffrey's next to you.
He enjoyed it.
But do you turn around to him and go, Jeffrey, look at your man over there. Like, do you actually chat? Like,
we do chat, yeah. I mean, look, we get on fine. I I mean, I bumped into Jeffrey. We were at May Day in Hollywood, and you know the way Hollywood does the whole like Maypole thing.
I was down there as well.
Yeah,
I was down there.
And Jeffrey was there, and we bumped into each other, and we had a bit of crack and got a photo with him and put it up on social media and stuff. Like, we do get on fine. It's not a personal animosity. We're very different politics, obviously, and you know we disagree on stuff, but we're not personally. There's no personal animosity there, and I mean, there will be some times when that will come through with other politicians, but he's not one of the ones that I would be like, you know, constantly.
He has a stance, and that's what he's.
Yeah, and he's pleasant enough to deal with when you're sitting like at an event like that. It's, you know, it's always a bit awkward, like some of the dinners and stuff, and you get, you know, the old kind of Irish American politicians get up, and they tell these tales of the Ireland of their great grandfather, and it's all a bit misty-eyed and maybe not that relevant to modern Ireland or modern anywhere, and that can feel a wee bit awkward, I think, at times, because some of them still think that it's back in the day and the famine's still going, and it can all be a little bit like hostile. And
we've got Wi-Fi.
I mean, it's like
the Titanic will be heading out.
But it's that thing of, you know, that can feel a bit awkward. Like some of the speeches during that period, during the Ireland Fund event and stuff, was a bit cringe, you know. Not in fairness just for Jeffrey and Doug, but I think most of us at the table were a bit like, you know, is that really the story of today? Probably not. But I think where others might get offended by it, I think it's fairly well-intentioned stuff. Look, at bottom line, you know, you have the president of the US, you have, you know, their leader in Congress and all that kind of stuff. You have all these people, their head of Senate and all the rest, all descending. Ireland is the talking point in Washington for a week. Northern Ireland this time was top of the agenda. Everybody's eyes were focused on us. We come back, you know, the Clinton mobile sweeps into town. We have all of that happening. You've people, you know, like George Mitchell is an absolute gent. I mean, he's just one of the best people that's ever been involved in the Northern Ireland process, and a very ill man, and came against medical advice to come and speak in Northern Ireland, and gave this, not just the speech of his life, but probably the speech of my life, because I don't think I'll ever hear anybody speak as well again. And, you know, you need to be either really arrogant or really hard not to be moved by the fact that so many people are invested in what's happening here and want it to go well. Like, I don't know how you just switch yourself off to that and say it doesn't matter. The fact that so many people, and, you know, population in Northern Ireland, you know, medium-sized city in America, and yet we get all this attention. You know, we should be grateful. I make no bones about it. You know, I don't always agree with everything that the president's going to say or everything America's going to do, but the fact that they're that invested in what's happening for us, the fact that they're interested in what's happening and want to support us, I'm all about embracing it and saying, well, let's make the best of this, let's put it to good use. If you've got goodwill, you just have to keep at it, you know. And I don't see the point in throwing it back in people's faces and being hostile about it or being prickly. You know, people will have their own personal stories, their own family stories that have been passed down generation after generation, and you know, some of it's half mythology, half fact, and that's just the way it is. But you don't get prickly about that when you're there as a guest. You just embrace what it is and the fact that you're welcomed. And there's no doubt, like, it doesn't matter whether you're going from the DUP or Sinn Féin or Alliance or whatever. When you go to Washington and you turn up on St. Patrick's Day, like, you are welcome and they want you there. And nobody could come away thinking anything else.
Brilliant.
I'm going to be brutally honest here in relation to America and the president and things like that. Like you were saying earlier about how they're very full-on days, like, you know, the meetings and things like that. How is Joe Biden doing it at his age? Like, is he just, like, you've met him, is he just a machine? Is he just...
He's actually really, really lovely.
Yeah,
I've heard that,
he loves people.
Yeah.
He obviously feeds off that energy. So when he can get out talking to people, like, they try to keep him, you know, they try for security reasons to keep him away from people, so it's all very tightly controlled. Yeah, but even in the University of Ulster, when he came to do the opening and he immediately, when he got off the podium was round, shaking hands and talking to people. And I mean, he stood and chatted to myself and Kate Nicholl, one of our MLAs, for ages. And it just told us so much of his backstory. His daughter, who died as a child in the car accident, was called Naomi, and he's a granddaughter called Naomi. And he was telling us that. He was telling us about his wife and what happened, and the fact that it was the Kennedys, it was Rose Kennedy, who actually, when he was going to stand down, having just been elected to office, he was going to stand down, and they said to him, don't stand down, you need this job more than ever, we'll help you with the family and stuff. And you know, it's a very emotional connection that he has with people. I personally don't know how somebody of his age can do it with transatlantic flights. I mean, I was wrecked when I got back from the States. I had pneumonia after I got back from the States, because I must have picked a bug up on the way home or on the way there or whatever. And I was and I'm going, hi. Like, I know he's Air Force One and not like I was. You know, it's not like
premium economy.
Ryanair, like Ryanair middle seat. New York to Terminal 2. Dublin.
Exactly. It's a different experience, but nevertheless, there is something about, you know, it takes a lot out of you, that transatlantic stuff, the time changes, all the rest of it. And, you know, all I know is when I'm his age, if I'm still in this job,
you be here?
I hope somebody will have tapped me on the shoulder a long time before and said, catch yourself on, because I do not want to still be here when I'm in my 80s. Like, you know,
we don't want to be here now.
Well, there are a lot of people would say that about politics, but I just think there comes a point in life where you've done your stint, you've given what you have.
And he's given a lot.
He has. But politics in the States is weird, because the older generation of politicians, a lot of their presidents have been older, and that's kind of not that unusual. In fact, what's been more unusual is more recently having younger presidents has been the more unusual thing.
Because Obama is still younger than the current president and the last president, and he'll probably be younger than the next president, which is like crazy to think.
Across Europe, Sanna Marin, who was the Prime Minister of Finland, I know she's stepping down soon, but she was only like 34, 35 or something like that. Yeah. There's a couple of really couple of young ones in, I think, in Austria and stuff like that. So, like, and I think, you know, what's happening, I think is very, very important. There's a couple of people in the House of Representatives in America, younger Republican politicians, you know what they've done? They started to go on TikTok, right? And they actually explain simple stuff to people. And I actually watched this going, do you know what? I wouldn't have, this is explained clearly, factually, and calmly. Yeah. And I actually understand it. The reason why this is happening, the reason why there's a vote on this, and this is the outcome, and why is it happening, rather than it's like, he said this, she said that, boom, 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 boom. And like, I find that as somebody like from the South, and I want to ask you what your relationship is like with going down South and stuff like that, is like, when I was growing up as a kid, a lot of the stuff we kind of do in the podcast is comedy podcast, but I do try and say to people like the North, you know, I feel this place has got great opportunity, but it's been held back by stuff that the majority of people are sick of and it didn't vote for it, didn't ask for it, and they're being punished for something that's nothing to do with them. And it's like, you know, I would have had a very negative view of the North growing up as a child. Like in the 90s when I was going to school, RT Radio 1, Morning Ireland, 8 o'clock, petrol bomb, car bomb, kneecap, petrol bomb, or you see this, or you see that. I'm like, it might as well have been America or Australia to me. It was nothing to do with me. Very different growing up than what Aaron had growing up. I come up here, I live out in East North Down, that's where I live. Completely area that I never thought I would ever end up. Never felt so welcome. The beautiful beaches, the beautiful nightlife, the restaurants, the golf, the tourism. And then when I went down to Cork and I said to people like, oh, I live up in the north, a lot of people said to me, what are you doing up there? Because they don't have, all they hear is, there's a fight out in Newton Ards, there's gangs here, there's gangs in Dublin, there's gangs in Cork, but they're not telling you. But it's also different because our gangs have their roots in paramilitary organisations, and so people see that as part of the ongoing legacy of the Troubles. In truth, most of them now are organised crime gangs and have been for a very long time, and use political cover to try and justify what they do. But it's the same stuff. It's the drug dealing, it's extortion, it's racketeering, it's all that stuff. We have the Kinahans down south, and we also have that big court case with Jerry the Monk, which is one of the biggest drug cartels in the world. Yet if something happens in a housing estate in Newton Ards, it's, the North is at it again. It's not. So I always try to say to people, like, the North is not what you think it is. And I'm a big advocate of the North. But it never was. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, like, I grew up, suppose, in the 80s. So 1990, I finished school, went to university. So that was kind of my time.
But when I watch programmes about Northern Ireland, they don't really feel like they give the whole picture, right up until Lisa McGee and Derry Girls.
Yeah.
And it sounds really stupid, but for what was a comedy show to probably better encapsulate what it was like being a young person in Northern Ireland than anything else in a documentary ever would. Because documentaries will go to the hard places and they'll talk about the really painful stuff. And that was a big part of growing up in Northern Ireland, there's no doubt about it. Like, I have all those memories that people have about, you know, the Ring of Steel round Belfast. They closed the gates on the city at night and you couldn't get in. Yeah. Like, even, like, before you even got into the city centre, they had gates across the road. So you had to stop and be searched before you could drive through and so on. I remember, like, the army coming up the buses with their Alsatians sniffing for bombs on the buses. Like, I remember that stuff. But that was part of being in Northern Ireland. It wasn't all of being in Northern Ireland. Like, we did all the other stuff too. We still went out, we played with our friends, we went out and met people, we had fun. We did all the regular teenage stuff. And every so often, I suppose it was the bit that I thought Lisa McGee captured really well, when she kind of did the school concert, and then it took you to the family, and this kind of, it punched through about the bomb had gone off, and, you know, you could be at the, like, top moment in your life and things are going really well. As a kid, you're with your friends, having the time of your lives, and suddenly an announcement comes over the news. There's a bomb alert, key holders have to return, somebody's been shot, whatever it was. And sometimes that was just background noise because you didn't know who those people were, you didn't know what the circumstances were. And other times it was somebody you knew, or it was somebody you'd met, or it was a street that you recognised, and it kind of punched through into your consciousness and you knew it was happening. And, you know, for a lot of people who lived maybe in more, I mean, I lived in a very urban area in inner East Belfast, so my experience will have been very different to somebody who lived in a more rural community, and you know, it would have varied. But that overall thing of, it became part of the backdrop to what was normal life. People were still friendly, people still got on with their lives, they got married, they had families, they lived life, but there was this massive abnormality going on in the background, and as far as possible, parents just tried to shield you from seeing it, but it was there. I mean, it's odd now when you hear those, you know, when they play the old tapes of, like, the key holders being called back to their shops in the town to search for incendiary devices and stuff. That was routine, and it was just something that happened, and it didn't seem weird. And it wasn't until you went somewhere else outside of Northern Ireland you realised it was weird. Like, when you went to Dublin and nobody searched your handbag in a shop, or when you went to Manchester and nobody was patting you down going into town, then you realised, God, this is weird. You know, I mean, I remember when they took the, they were just starting to take the security away from the shops in Belfast, and at the doors, and my uncle and my dad were standing at the door of, I think it was Marks and Spencer's or something, they were standing, and they were waiting people coming through, and they were just standing there waiting on my mum and my aunt, and these ladies came over and opened their bags because they thought they were the security, you know. And my uncle, like, he texts through the handbag, and, you know, and he goes, "That's great, ladies, but we're not security. Like, we're just nosy, you know." And it was just, but people, and then they laughed because it was funny because people, it was just a dark sense of humour that people had, you know. And he, rather than just say to them, "Oh no, we're not security," he was like rifling through their bag like this was totally normal, and then, "Oh, it's all right, had a hope there, but we're not security, we're just nosy." And it was just, people just laughed it off, and it was how it was. And that, I think that dark sense of humour actually was really important in getting people through a difficult time, and not that different in some ways, I suppose, to the humour you get in other places, you know, because it keeps you going. But like, my memories of growing up, despite the troubles, were happy memories. But I do remember the troubles, and I do remember the awfulness of it. And I think particularly in my late teens, early 20s, when I started moving around the city more, you know, for university and for work and things like that, it really started to grate on me that the people that I was with might not be safe the places I go, and I might not be safe in the places they go. And that started to become more of an issue because we lived these kind of smaller lives where you didn't really venture that far out of your own patch because you knew you'd be safe there, but it also meant other people didn't venture in because they mightn't be. And that, I think that's a shame, because actually now, when people have an awful lot more freedom to move about, you know, people's lives are so much better.
Yeah, like Aaron's from the West, So he's from Andytown.
Yeah.
Andytown, isn't it?
I'm on a scheme right now. No,
Right.
I don't know which one, but
I
I'm
actually
on
get
it.
a grant for him to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah, it's all to do with funding now.
He's on the DLA, but no one knows he's working on the side, all right? But he's from
promise
the
I'm
west
not.
and you're from the east.
Yeah.
So you would have had completely different...
And yet now you could jump on a glider at the end of
and
where
you-
I
and
grew
you
up
could-
and be
yeah.
straight over in no time. So
Yeah.
that's changed. I mean, I remember I was doing, I would get a lot of like students would come and want to interview me for school projects and things. And I always liked to do it because like politicians when I was growing up weren't particularly accessible, and I think we should be.
Yeah.
And I like young people as well because they tend to ask questions because they want an answer, not because they're trying to catch you out, and I like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of enjoy working with young people, but you know we had girls who were coming over from St Dominic's and places like that.
3
and,
buses to get to you.
And it would, you know, but they would now, they're like, if we get the glider, where's the stop? And we're like, it's right outside my office, and they're like, perfect. So it's just like, it means they can come to East Belfast, you know. That thing of, you know, the wee ladies who hear about Ballyhackamore and here it's called Ballysnakamore because it's got all the wee cafes and all that. And we women who go out for coffee every week in West Belfast and they're going, right, we've tried everywhere here, we'll jump on the glider and we'll go over there and have a cup of coffee. And I love that. I love the fact that people are getting out of the city. My husband is a councillor, and I think it was the last elections, they did a bus tour for councillors around the city. Because they did a survey of councillors, all the ones who'd just been elected, and most of the councillors had never set foot outside their own part of the city. Some of them had not been outside their own DEA other than the city centre, but others had never, like East Belfast councillors had never been to West Belfast, West Belfast councillors had never been to East Belfast, they'd never been in North, and they did a tour, and Michael said to me, he said, I kind of felt weird because... He said, I was born in Canada, so I'm kind of a bit out there anyway. But he had lived or worked in every part of the city at some stage. So started out living in East Belfast. Originally actually lived in just south East Belfast. Then moved to East Belfast with his parents. Then went to Queen's in South Belfast. Then did his residency in the Royal as a dentist. So he was in West Belfast. And then when he was working in Whitewell. And so he was in North. And he said, I was one of the few councillors that had actually lived in the whole of Belfast rather than just one bit.
Wow.
And it's hard to have a vision for a city or a place if there's loads of bits of it you never experience or you never see or that are kind of strange to you. And it's also then, I think, really easy for politicians to win easy votes by demonising people from there. So...
Yeah.
You know, if you've never been in an area, it's really easy to say everybody there is this, and then people go, oh, that must be true, because they've never experienced anything else. Whereas once people start moving around and getting to know each other, they realise actually they're just like me.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same as every other part of the city.
Yeah.
There are some melters and there are some really good people.
Well,
and that's
Speaking our language.
Yeah, but that's I mean that is Belfast. I mean, you know, you'll get your fair share of melters wherever you go, but you'll also get your fair share of really good, sound individuals, people who are doing amazing things. But you need to get out and see that, and I think it's one of the things that we need to do more is mix people up a bit and get them moving around so they see more outside their own neighbourhood and get that wee bit of ambition and a wee bit of, you know, excitement about, oh, if they can do that, we can do that, you know, because there's some really good things happening everywhere, but it just doesn't get seen.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were speaking about, you know, our dairy guards and sense of humour and things like that. Do you ever go to comedy clubs? Have you ever been to a comedy night here? Have you been to like the Empire maybe?
Do you know when I was in London as an MP, my treat was going to the Comedy Store, and any time I'd ever been in.
Of one of the MCs there.
Listen, I loved it. I loved it because you didn't know what you were getting when you went in. So we would go and do the improv stuff with Paul Merton and people like that occasionally, but we would also go and we would watch like. You just see random people.
Friday night or the Saturday night, is it?
And we would have gone to, there's the Secret Comedy Club, which is underneath the pizza place.
Top secret.
Yeah, that one. We went there and like we saw some incredible comedians either testing out new material or starting out, and then you'd see like 4 years later be like, Joel, we saw him before he was a thing.
Used to live with Joe.
Yeah, amazing. And so I love that. And actually just was it last Saturday? Sunday night before last. We actually went to see Hal Cruttenden in the Limelight.
Oh, brilliant!
And
I was meant to do support for that, I think, but wasn't available.
Yeah,
Was Hal talking about? I know what he was talking about. Especially here for me, he broke up with his wife and stuff.
Yeah. And he was brilliant. Like, he was really, really funny.
Yeah.
And we've seen him before. We saw him at the Udderbelly Channel 4 Udderbelly thing that in London in the South Bank, and we went to see him. So yeah, I mean, I like comedy because I like to have a laugh. I would watch a lot of comedy specials on Netflix and stuff when I'm at home, but it's not the same.
You won't believe this, Naomi, but I filmed my comedy special a couple of weeks ago in the Black Box in Belfast, and he just filmed his comedy special. So you've got two specials that you can watch in the next couple of months.
I'll be putting a marker down.
I have political jokes as well.
Oh, brilliant!
I'll tell you one of the jokes, right?
Okay.
I'm living in East Belfast. I'm living in, say, a predominantly unionist area. I'm just doing a bit of painting on the front of the house. I'm just finishing off my Bobby Sands memorial. Right?
You get
the next door neighbour comes over and goes, Andrew, what made you move here? So I'm actually part of the Sinn Féin relocation scheme, right? So you get some gags of it. But I remember doing a gig and Mary Lou was in the front row, and I remember saying to her, Mary, that's the safest seat you're going to be sitting on. But she was great crack. But I often say this to her about politicians: they should go to comedy night and see what people are talking about on stage. See what the issue is. Comedians are actually talking about real issues.
Yeah.
Like, go and stand at the back and, like, you know, you can go and see someone like Colin Murphy, Jake O'Kane, all these brilliant local comedians, and even like people.
Well, the
like
weirdest
that,
one I ever saw was I was in Iceland a few months ago.
It's already weird.
It was.
20 quid a pint.
I went to see, of all people, Ed Byrne.
Wow.
In Iceland.
Wow.
It was just, we were looking for something to do that evening, and I looked and I said, Ed Byrne's on, and I said there'd be no tickets, and we looked and there were tickets, and I'm like, let's go.
Was it good?
It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed it. So I love watching comedy, and but it's not the same. I think there's something different when you're watching it at home. It's a wee bit.
You've got to be in the room.
I think it's good when you're in the room and you hear it, and it's the stuff that happens that's unintentional. The things that you can't script, and you see really good comedians cope really well with that, but they also can make a real story out of it. Like the interaction, I mean, Hal Cruttenden, the interactions that he was having actually with the people in the audience were like a good portion of the show and were just brilliant. And it also helped that the audience, there were some quite mad characters in the audience, which also added a wee bit to the show. But it's that thing about if you went to see him another night, it would be basically the same show, but not the same show we saw.
So you saw something quite unique.
Yeah, and I think because it's such a small venue in the Limelight, it is really tiny. Whereas, say you go to the Waterfront Hall and you see some of the people there, it's much more going to be like what you would see on a comedy special, because there's less interaction, there's less, you can't do the same. But in those small venues, there's something. It's
magic. There's a bit of magic.
There is, because you get the odd, header who comes in and shouts and
my dad.
But you get the odd one who comes in and they'll shout and stick their hand up and say mad stuff, and but then you get the other people who are really shy and you have to draw them out. But when you do, the stories are
it's hilarious,
amazing. So I think that's part of. I suppose that's fundamentally. I think if you like people, comedy shows are quite good, because you find out a lot about the people in the audience in a way you wouldn't in another show, but you find it out in like really funny ways, and I find it really relaxing.
Can I just ask before we finish up, what's your relationship with the South, with Cork, with Dublin? Have you been down South? Did you go down South much to go on holiday? Did you go down holiday much? Do you like going down? What do you love about it? What do you what's your relationship with it?
Well, I spend a lot of time in Donegal.
Here we go.
Because
everyone in Northern Ireland goes to bloody Donegal.
We love Donegal. We love Donegal.
Honest to God, if I hear Donegal,
why do you not like Donegal?
Everyone goes. I'm sick of it.
But that's your problem for not going.
It's
Donegal. There's a beach here. You can go over near Derry.
The beaches in Donegal. I took photos of beaches in Donegal with the sun shining, right? And I sent them to friends of mine when I was in the European Parliament. And I'm like, this is where I am today. They're like, oh, you're in the Caribbean? And I'm like, no, I'm wearing a glove and scarf and a big padded coat, but that's what it looks like in Donegal. It's just, the beaches are stunning. I mean, it's just amazing. So I love that. But I love Dublin. I like, there's a buzz in the city that you get that I like, and I really like Dublin. I like the food. I like I kind of just like the vibe in Dublin.
Andrew hates Dublin.
Oh no, I
hates
do.
having
I
hates having the park in it.
But also, well, yeah, okay, the parking. I'll give you the parking.
Listen,
but
if
what
you
I
could,
do
if you
like,
could speak to Leo or Radcar about the park, that would be great. But
I do genuinely like during COVID, we did all of our holidaying on the island. Like we weren't off Ireland for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And we did the whole like loop the loop and did
you go to Cork?
Yeah.
Well, what's in Cork? Come on, Naomi, come on.
I love
Overrated.
Cork.
Yes!
I do. No. I love Cork. I
Kinsale?
do. Oh, Kinsale.
I'm just up the road from Kinsale.
Well,
It's called Carrigaline. It's in
oh,
between.
yeah,
It's between
I know
Cork City, Carrigaline, and Kinsale. It's like in the middle.
I'm quite excited because I do know it. It's lovely. I think Kinsale is possibly one of the most stunning harbours anywhere in these islands. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't beat it. And I like Cork. I like Cork. I struggle a wee bit with the accent.
It is. It's very.
I mean, it's not Kerry, but
Oh, Kerry's a different breed.
yeah, but
I tell you, I come over here now
bit.
tomorrow and say, no, I tell you, I shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
But it is. I struggle a wee bit with the accent at times, but other than that, I'm sure they struggle with mine. But I do really, I love it. I also love travelling.
Yeah,
I guess, and I like meeting people. But when we were in Cork, the last time on holiday, we got the most fantastic weather. I mean, I'm sorry, there is nowhere you would go in the world that would beat Kinsale.
On a hot day.
On a hot day. Like, there's just nowhere.
Yeah.
It was absolutely stunning. So we had a ball.
I'm delighted you know. Right, before we finish up, a couple of quick questions. If you were to recommend me and Aaron to go away to a European city for 2 nights, what's your top city in Europe that you go, I love going to this city? Where would you go? You love travelling. Where would be top city?
In Europe.
Send us to go. I recently came back from Krakow. I'd recommend that.
I've been, yeah.
Very clean.
Do you know, I'd be torn at the minute. I liked Reykjavik because it's a bit weird.
Right.
And a bit like offbeat and really interesting to see. So that would be like, it would be up
Very
there.
expensive, don't it?
Well, that's, I was going to say, like,
Very
I mean,
expensive. I've looked into it. Like,
it's nerve-wracking. Like, you don't want to order anything in the pub before you've checked the price. It's like, it's that level. But whereas really, really nice for like a weekend is Tallinn in Estonia.
Oh, okay.
I've heard that,
It's
Tallinn.
absolutely beautiful.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful and not really, really expensive.
Good. My girlfriend's from Cloghey and Newton Arts Peninsula. She'd love that now. She'd love Tallinn.
Cheap holidays.
She loves the cheap holiday. Like,
Tallinn is beautiful, and if your girlfriend likes chocolate, they make the most amazing chocolate.
yeah,
I
she
didn't know
loves
this. So, like in the winter, it's lovely because there's loads of like coffee shops that do like hot chocolate and all that kind of stuff, and it's a bit like, it's a little bit like Prague, but like smaller and more manageable. It's like a pocket Prague almost.
like
It's
I
got
was in
all that.
Rotterdam 2 weeks ago, and I thought Rotterdam was like a smaller version of Amsterdam, which I preferred.
Yeah.
Not as many tourists. If you know
Well,
what I mean.
that's kind of, I would say Tallinn's a bit like that. That's where actually I got engaged, believe it or not.
very nice.
Yeah, many years ago.
Many years ago. Also, what are you watching on telly? Are you watching Blue Lights?
I did watch Blue
What'd
Lights.
you think of it?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was really well written. I think sometimes Northern Ireland based programmes can be a wee bit twee and a wee bit not very realistic. They're either overacted and a bit overdone, or they're a bit underdone and a
Cliched
bit
as well.
cliche.
Yeah.
I thought it struck the right note. It was just, there was enough humour in it to cut it up. To do a police drama here without that dark humour wouldn't work, because there's a lot of dark humour in policing here, and it's just the way it is. And I think it wouldn't have felt real without it. I thought it was really good. But at the minute, what am I watching? Well, at the minute, believe it or not, I'm for the next couple of nights, I'm watching the Depp versus Heard stuff.
On Netflix.
Yeah,
Is there a documentary?
No, it's a three series, the 3-episode series. It's over 3 nights this week, and I'm tuning in to see that because it's just, to me, fascinating dynamics. Watching 2 actors in court, and you don't know which of them is one of them a better actor than the other or more truthful than the other, and it's just fascinating to watch.
It's a crazy story.
Well,
isn't it?
the thing is, at the time, I wasn't that interested in it because I didn't really know who she was.
Yeah.
I knew who he was, but I wasn't that interested.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in the dynamics of it. I'm watching it in like 3 nights for an hour each, rather than like
Dragged out a little bit.
dragged out for months. I don't have the stickability for something that long.
Yeah, where do people get the time? To watch an 8-hour court case every single day, like
not even if you're on trial.
If you're able to watch an 8-hour court case every single day, there's something wrong in your life.
Yeah.
So that's why I couldn't do that. But this is good because it's just like picking out the highlights and running through the dynamics of the whole thing, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, Naomi Long, thank you very much. I hope this was okay for you, because probably thinking about coming onto a podcast, like, oh my God, what am I let myself in for? But we just want to, I suppose, just have a normal chat with people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And we do appreciate you coming onto the.
You should pick normal people in future, and that'll make it easier.
Listen, Naomi, I went into the ballot box last week and I put 1, 2, 3, and 4 on all the 4 Alliance councillors in North Down.
Brilliant.
And when I went to vote last year, I went Naomi Long number 1. Who was your deputy? Who was your number 2?
Oh, Peter McReynolds.
Right, and then I went 1, 2 Alliance. Then I went Green.
Yeah.
And then I was like, there's no point in voting Sinn Féin because they're not going to get in East. Right, so I was doing all this kind of stuff, and I went Alliance 1 and 2. Then I went Green. Then I went. Who did I go to? I think I went SDLP then.
Naomi, see, when he has Michelle O'Neill on here, he'll say the exact same
I know.
thing. So I voted number 1 Sinn Féin.
No, it's not true.
It's exactly the same when you're canvassing. You go to the door and they're like, absolutely.
Of course, I'll fix the road.
You've got my number 1. You've got my number 1, and the next person comes on. You've got my number 1. Or people will do the best one. The cryptic one is, you'll definitely get a vote.
That is cryptic. Why do they not just say yes?
1 or 10. Makes a big difference. You'll definitely get a vote.
Thanks so much for coming on,
No
Chan.
problem.
It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Lovely
Great to meet you too.
Thanks, Naomi.
Cheers.